Good people of Kenya and all over the world, my name is Kevin Stories and I'm here with one of my good friends. He has one of the best stories that deserve to be heard by the world. When is today?
Hey, good question. I have lost track.
We are rolling down this episode about the Laikipia Maasai.
That's it.
So ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to roll with us with our guest today on show? Welcome so much, sir. How are you feeling, sir?
Yeah, I'm grand. Thank you. I'm very good. Very good.
You can introduce yourself by your name.
So my name's Nigel Watson, and I'm co-founder of an organisation called Laikipia Maasai.
Yes.
And we support a number of Maasai communities, 5 in total at the moment, up in Laikipia.
Wow.
So
It's an incredible story. I have heard it myself, and there's no need to keep it to ourselves. It belongs to the people out there. So, what is Laikipia Maasai?
So Laikipia Maasai is a relatively new not-for-profit organisation that looks at supporting 5 Maasai communities here in Laikipia. So we're literally just back from my son and I about 10 days up in the community. So we arrived back here last night.
So you've been in the hills. You stay with the communities.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. No, we go up and stay with them, and that's the beauty and the magic of it. To be honest, they're such amazing people, such beautiful, warm-hearted people.
Good.
And we're lucky enough that we are welcomed in as one of them. So that really is quite beautiful.
So let me interrupt for a little bit. So you came from England.
Yes,
Kenya.
correct.
How did you identify that community? You know, Maasai, Laikipia Maasai is a non-profit organization. How did you identify the Maasai? What inspired you to identify it?
So it came about quite accidentally back in 2001, and I was out in the States, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, I'd really like to introduce you to somebody back in the UK." And so we met this person, and they happened to say, "Look, I've been working with this concept of territories and mapping, and I've just come back from a trip with the Maasai. Amazing people. I'd love to take you there." And so that's what we did. We arranged this trip, and he very kindly took me out there, and fell in love with the whole experience and what was going on. These guys hadn't had rain for 4.5 years, and I thought as a young 30-something I was going to be able to solve all of their problems.
So sweet.
And or a bit arrogant, one of the two. But it was an immensely humbling experience because I recognized they didn't need my help. And in fact, I ended up learning more in that week with them than I'd learned in the whole of my life, and still applying much of that learning in those practices today.
Let me get this correct. So you came to Kenya in the year 2001. You're coming to it was just a trip.
Yes.
And then you identified a community through your friend.
Yes.
And then now you said, let me go and help because they have been going through drought and stuff.
Yes.
But now it turned from help to you learning.
Correct.
Oh, goodness. And then after now you've learned, then you can now do.
Well, not only that, I then built a good friendship with Eric and came back to the UK a few times and working in businesses with me, with some clients and the like. So it went to actually other businesses being able to recognize that wisdom that exists within tribal communities and their ability to dissect through so many different things and get to the core nub of the issues without politics. So that was immensely valuable. But then we lost touch for a number of years, as you do.
So you came and lost touch with Eric.
That's correct.
Will you introduce yourself?
Yes.
To the community?
Yeah.
How was it now because you've lost the person who was putting you into the community?
So really we just carried on with life as you do, had a family and all those kind of things.
Inside the community?
He was living in there, I was.
So you're catching up when he was in a trouble.
Yeah. So I went back to the UK, carried on with business.
The year?
So that was all in 2001. Then he would visit. Maybe we kept contact for about another 2 or 3 years, and then lost contact for many years.
And then now you came back.
Almost. So back then in December 2023, managed to reconnect with Eric, only to find they were at the end of a 5-year drought, but a very severe one, where they lost most of their livestock, over 90% of their livestock. And the community was in bits. The community was breaking up. They'd lost 7 members of the community to starvation. And so people were not only moving their cattle, as nomadic people do, pastoralists do, but they were moving out into the towns and the cities to find work or to beg. And that just broke mine and my family's heart. And so we felt we had to do something. And so we cancelled Christmas that year, tried to organise a little bit of fundraising, but most of it we did ourselves. We sold stuff and did what we could, fed about 1,000 people over Christmas New Year.
1,000 people?
Yeah, just over, yeah. And I think the thing to remember is an English pound or a European euro, can make a big impact over here. So we just did what we could to channel as much funding into doing the right things and reminding Eric of the vision he had back in 2001.
It was a vision that was once dying.
Yes.
And you decided to
Yeah.
Wow.
And because of the hardships that had all been forgotten, he'd had this vision 24 years ago, but the community wasn't ready. Now it was critical that they did listen. And so the best way to get the community back and in a place to listen was to say, let's organise some kind of celebration. Let's get the community back from the towns and the cities. Let's organise a celebration. And Eric, this is your opportunity to talk to the communities again about this vision. But we need to add some things. We need to go beyond just looking at moving cows around and being pastoralists. We need to look at other things that are more climate resistant. And so that's what we did. We brought the community back. We had celebrations. Once they had food in their tummies, we were able to then have conversations about what the future could look like. That's it. It's hard to listen on an empty stomach, I know.
Of course, yes.
I know.
On an empty stomach. Wow.
So that was important. And over that Christmas, we identified, we did a lot of research, and we identified another Maasai community who were over in the Loiter Hills, and a fantastic organisation called Red Tribe, who were in amongst the Maasai there and working with them and had been for years, and helped them in a journey towards looking at agriculture, looking at how to get clean water in, how to take their schools to another level. And so we couldn't persuade them to come up here to Laikipia. But they did say, well, why don't you bring some of the Maasai from Laikipia down to Red Tribe? You
so
come
they
over.
deep in the forest.
Yes. Yeah. And up in the hills. Yeah.
Up in the forest.
Yeah. Fantastic location. Incredible.
And wow.
So I took 3 Maasai from our community. Eric, naturally, a guy called George, who I've just been on a video call with this morning, because he's just been in hospital, and a member of the youth community called Rizal. And we went over and spent time in with the Loiter Maasai. So that was great for them to meet Maasai to Maasai.
So to enter that community, you use the people of the land.
Right.
That's really.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the most challenges that you guys face. Let me say, you have a good heart, and then your heart maybe to help, and then you get the wrong way to enter the community.
Correct.
Community entry, actually, we can say community entry is one of the most important things, because they can choose to be hostile, not knowing that you carry good things.
Well, I think there's 2 things. One is they can be hostile or resistant.
Yeah.
And I think the second thing is, and often what a lot of charitable organisations are guilty of unintentionally, a lot of faith-based organisations in particular, look to invoke change or to drop money into projects, but it's not sustainable. And so the difficulty is that builds a dependency on the community.
Yeah.
And I think what we learned from our time over here and working together is we co-created a 10-year plan that would eradicate poverty in their 5 communities. And we looked at what is needed so that they could provide their own healthcare, so they could create their own local economies through social enterprise. And the key to that then was building that community engagement. And so that was the very next thing they tasked with. And I said, you can go and get that community engagement. If you can go and socialize this amongst those 5 communities, you bring in the leadership, you work with them. If this is what they want, you then move to the next level of leadership. And if they engage around that, they say, we want to do this, then we need to form a community partnership board where there's equal representation of men, women and youth on each one of those community boards, and those are elected positions. Then I'll come back and let's look at the next stage, how we do that.
Wow. So let me get this correct. The thing is, you're not giving the people a fish, the fish process.
Correct.
But them, they want to be given the fish so that they spend on money.
Sure.
Mostly those faith-based organizations, they want money to drop in their basket.
Yeah.
And for you, you are here to create a solution that it is a part of each other, to make you to be sustainable.
And don't get me wrong, the stuff that other organizations are doing is great, and it's with great intent and great heart, but what we're trying to look at is something that sustains these communities and
Yeah.
lifts them out of poverty once
So
and for all.
actually, lifting someone from poverty, you can't provide for them. They're the one who are able to lift them by empowered. It's just a sign of empowerment. I get it. Wow, that's amazing. So let me ask you, what really inspires you to take this thing? You came all the way from England. Did you do same stuff in England, or this was your first time?
I work with people, leaders and organizations in companies, typically medium or large size companies, looking at transformation and change, looking at culture and things that are purpose-led and that are sustainable. But never in my life did I contemplate doing anything like this. But it's one of those where I couldn't not. And I feel so passionately and emotionally committed to the Maasai that it felt very important to do that.
Oh, the Maasai people are like they have someone like you. Yeah, they're like.
So we're very lucky that we have that close, trusting relationship. And the Maasai, you know, if they like you and trust you or want to get to know you, they invite you into their house for tea. And you know, if you're inside somebody's house, that's a real position of trust.
What's the future of Laikipia Maasai?
The future is building or helping them build a set of communities that are more or less self-sufficient, where they're driving socially enterprises through their own economies and building their own economies such that they're able to source and run their own healthcare instead of individuals perhaps having to pay school fees each week, each month or each year or whatever. The schools are funded so that their children can just go, and so that we help them move education to another level. We build in some of the changes that we're looking at into that social curriculum within schools, and we create a kind of a closed system that allows them to just keep growing. And that way they can build a real strength, real empowerment. They have such strong women in their communities, but there's a divide between the men and the women. So we're looking to help bridge that gap, and we're able to do that from jointly with Eric from more of a trusted position. So much so that last week I turned up to what I thought was a meeting with the elders, and it turned out to be a big ceremony, inviting me in as an elder. And so
wow. So you're an elder of Maasai.
Yes, yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So tremendous privilege. It means we're able to invoke change. And so we've been working quite hard in the background. We've just kicked off a 3-year bee farming program training through a wonderful organisation called Bees Abroad.
Sure.
And this is the first time they've ever committed to a 3-year program anywhere in Africa.
Yeah.
But they've done that because of the level of community engagement.
Shout out to Bees Abroad.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
So we're in that process of helping train and educate Maasai pastoralists around things like bee farming, which is great.
Which is not their area.
Correct.
So you're putting them in a position where they are able to rely their own self-reliance
And use their resources.
There is the resources. They have resources.
Yeah. And everything up there is completely organic. So people love and pay a lot of money for Maasai honey. It's well known, it's medicinal, it's beautiful. And there are now 6 different brands or 6 different flavors of Maasai honey, which is fantastic. And
I didn't even know that.
yeah, neither did I until last week. And but there are specialists within the communities that we're just discovering who have been on this path for a little while, but doing it on their own vision. So we've looked at how can we align our 10-year visions and help each other more, so that rather than him doing it on his own, we're doing it more as social enterprises across the whole community. That means he'll hit his vision much quicker. It means he won't make as much money as he would individually, but the community will. And that's what we're trying to educate around, is not making individuals rich, but making the community rich.
Very nice. Wow. Wow, it's just an honor. It's one of the best. Wow, this is one of the best stories I've had the privilege to sit.
I don't want to take too much of the glory for that.
No, you
it is good what we're doing, yeah. but actually it's incredible what they're doing and how they're responding to it. I love that. I'd be more comfortable with them in the spotlight, to be honest. I'm happy having a big voice at the early part of this, but the deal is my voice has to tail off as we go further through this, and their voice has to take over. Beyond that, as we get to year 6, 7, what we're looking at is how can we then look at their neighbouring Maasai communities and bring them on board? How can they mentor those communities? Beyond that is how can we then look at change within the other 70,000 Maasai that are between here and Nairobi? Red Tribe take care of the other 30,000 the other side. But that's a lot of Maasai, and if we can help them come together not as a single community, but as a single voice, then they can stand strong around their people, around their culture, and most importantly, around their land and protect their land. So that's part of the goals of what we're doing. So as me personally, Laikipia Maasai as an organisation, we don't want to make or own anything over here. And that's really important to understand. Everything that's happening is for them. So we've just had a ceremony where we've handed over 8 safari tents so that they can kickstart a social enterprise.
I've heard about it.
Yeah.
We'll come to document there.
And the deal is that what we build is not to compete with any other accommodation around there, but it's to sit somewhere different in the middle to create something that's unique. It works in harmony and works in partnership with those other organizations.
You're ready to work with any other organization?
100%.
For any organization out there, you can partner with Laikipia Maasai. I know there have been some more people, but we are calling them on board.
Thank you.
To help push this, and personally, I'll be one of them.
Thank you.
I am joining you. Well, now I know this question is always comes because you're in a foreign country. This is a Kenyan government. I know there must be you've had interactions with the Kenyan government. How was it? Is it rough? How are the policies? How can you comment about that?
I think there's a lot that we don't know what we don't know yet, and we're going to come up against different things, I'm sure. There are certain things that are slow, there's certain things that are very difficult to make happen, but there's also things that do happen. So we've been working, for example, last year with the director of Laikipia County Water, a guy called Robert, and he's been fantastically supportive and helped us find a way to be able to create an affordable water survey that looks at additional sources of water, because nothing happens without water. We have a very effective, powerful, very committed councillor, Right Honourable Sarah, who lives up in Mussel, for 2 weeks of each month, and her husband is a wonderful man called Francis, who's a former Speaker in the House in Parliament. So he's very well known, and he's enormously committed too. So we're very lucky to have those amongst the community.
Yeah. Actually, you have the right support. Heko to our government. I am happy actually because they're really supporting.
Yeah, and they're starting to really get behind what we're doing. They were doing their own things anyway, but I think because we're bringing this overarching infrastructure and the confidence to be able to support the Maasai to implement it, then it creates a different direction and a purpose. Not just for them, but what we're hoping for is the other charities, because there's people there doing great work, NRT, Impact, and people like that. So we want to birth alongside them and say, how can we fit these things inside this 10-year plan? It's not our plan, it's the Maasai plan. And it's really important that these things join up and become more sustainable, and so they can take more ownership of those things.
Amazing. That's such an incredible story. And it's not only a story, because it's something that is happening on the ground. We're not telling a story of something that existed a long time ago. We are talking about today, tomorrow, and the future. And that is the best thing, because I have really taken keen note of that. This is your voice speaking to them. But in the longer run, you want your voice to fade away.
Correct.
But their voice, you're beating the drum for them so that they can dance, so that they can wake up and pick your drum.
And trust me, they can dance. They can dance well.
Wow! So it is of the Maasai, by the Maasai.
Correct.
For the Maasai.
Correct.
Amazing. Yeah. So have you learned some Swahili?
There you go.
Yeah. Have you learned some Swahili?
Yeah, there you go.
How do you speak with them? Some Swahili, I want to know the Swahili languages that you learn, and even some Maasai, because you've made an elder. Do you have to speak?
But I have to confess to, I will today, my grasp of Swahili at Maasai is limited. There's some, but it's all.
But you know Jambo.
Yeah, I know.
What else do you know? Habari yako.
Yeah, there's a few things that I know, and occasionally it catches them by surprise. But we had a big ceremony the other day, and somebody had helped me, and I was able to kind of open with, welcome to everybody, but in the Maasai way, that talks to the men and the women and to everybody, and say, how are you? And yeah, it was worth it just to see the kind of reaction.
Are you able to redo that speech that you did during that day? I know you were speaking direct to the community now.
Yeah, it was Payane, Autonomo, Enta Sopa. So that was the welcome thing, really. But it's limited, but I'm blessed by there are people there that speak extremely good English.
Yeah, wow.
Part of me feels guilty that I should know more, but My day job that I work back in the UK is what funds this. So I work very, very hard, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, sometimes just doing that to get the money to be able to do this. And then in the spare time, I do this. And so I'm in touch with the community probably most days, if not every day. We've put Starlink internet into, we have an office up there for the Laikipia Maasai. So we're in video contact.
So there's internet there, Starlink?
Yeah. So we have an infrastructure now, which is great. And we have a place where they can come and they can use the internet. We can have video calls. So we have leadership management meetings there.
You have a digital center for yourself?
Correct.
Actually, our government is saying that they're opening digital centers. So our government doesn't yet open a digital center there. So you're the first people to put a digital center. With standby network, and you can have good communication center. Because I know the youth, like for us the Gen Zs, we are always online.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And these guys aren't, but some of them are incredibly well educated, more so than me, which is great, and I love that. So, there's a number of them speak very good English, so, where we need to kind of speak to different parts of the community and there isn't any understanding of English and my Swahili or Maasai is too limited, then, somebody's there translating, which is great, but it's one of their people, and that's the most important bit.
I have to ask this question. Those things that approach it requires allow me to ask you this question with all honors. What do you do?
What do I do?
What do you do now?
So I work in leadership development and cultural transformation for businesses. So I work with individuals, with teams, and with whole organizations in terms of allowing them to work more effectively, more ethically, and in a more purpose-led way so that it happens, so that people follow in a different way. My main focus is around performance. How do you optimize performance? And most people recognize that when people are happy, they offer up something called discretionary performance. It's that where they go the extra mile.
The main source of income.
So I have a business called Tribal Teams, and I've had a consultancy business for 25 years now. Tribal Teams formed maybe about 3 years ago with all of those components, but reintroducing that tribal element and the aspect of tribal wisdom.
What can you tell to a 3-year-old Maasai child who doesn't know anything about her future? It's a lady. Talk to this little lady. She's a girl, 3-year-old. Tell her about her future in Laikipia Maasai.
So if we're talking to that 3-year-old girl, and this is just kind of thinking aloud really, my first thoughts would be to grow up safe and secure in the knowledge that you are growing into an incredible infrastructure that has existed for decades and decades and centuries, and the stuff there that really works. And the strapline for the organization we created is called Innovating Tradition for the Future. So it's around recognizing those principles that are really, really important, but not to be afraid to bring change and to recognize as a person, not just as a woman, that it's really important to develop and grow those ideas and socialize and share those ideas with people, and not to necessarily feel discriminated against because she's a female or a woman as she's growing older, but to believe in herself and to trust in her parents, trust in the community, to recognize that as we move on years by years, the influence of technology is going to be significant, and that can break up communities. What the Maasai have is something very different, and so it's about how to take the best of those bits that she's learning and apply them into the traditions and the principles of the community in which she's growing. And how can she make change? How can she be that vision for the future?
But that is for you, little girl. What is your advice? Can you tell who started the young, or maybe let that young people, because I've seen it's an eruption over heart, heart for heart. Kind of young people want to just go out to philanthropy. Maybe they're not well funded. What advice do you have for them?
For a charitable organisation?
Yes.
I think the one thing I would say is absolutely keep that intent. That's beautiful, what you want to do in terms of helping, but maybe look at what's the impact of that intent. And those are the two things that I think are really important, is to match the impact, the outcome with the intent. And to do that, it's probably worth speaking with people that are already doing some of that stuff and understanding what works, what doesn't work. And very few people will perhaps openly say, well, this doesn't work, or, I didn't do this well. But, people are smart enough to work that out. And I think the key is look for what's really going to work, what's really going to drive the biggest impact, because the younger people, that generation of people, are really wanting to see things better, wanting to see things different.
Yeah.
And so if you can match that intent for the impact, then I think you'll make a massive difference. And that may mean, spending time with different types of organisations. Obviously, we're one, but there are others out there doing great work, and so I would absolutely encourage that.
Right about this time, I want you to tell them where can they find you.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can find us. We have a website, laikipiamaasai.com.
Laikipiamaasai.com.
We have Facebook page, Laikipia Maasai.
Laikipia Maasai on Facebook.
And over the kind of coming months, you'll start to find us on other kind of social platforms as well.
So you can close for us with a Maasai word. We are closing with Maasai word because you've learned Maasai.
Well, I would just close with Ashe Ole, which means thank you very much.
Ashe?
Ashe Ole.
Ashe Ole. Ashe Ole.
Thank
you very much.
Ashe is thank you. Aleng is very much.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Come on,